price. But to me, that's not enough.
Training accidents or this type of training.
As I fundamentally disagree with a narrative.
Let's go back to a little bit in history. One question I have is about Watergate and presidential powers in the post-Watergate era. My recollection is that some of the presidential powers with regard to the ability to obtain classified information or to obtain confidential information on individuals was limited, and that could not be justified by a threat to national security. Is that the case? Do you recall those instances after in the post-Nixon era?
Abuses, quote unquote, did not originate in the Watergate period. What happened is the media and a lot of elites have waken up to the notion that the presidency is capable of abuses, because if you look at what happened in the presidencies prior to Nixon, they had enormous authority to obtain information about individuals, including their political enemies, and punishment of political enemies. The use of IRS to punish political enemies is certainly not something that originated in Nixon's watch. But you had this problem. Congress passed statutes that limited the ability of the executive branch to engage in wiretapping. We have something called Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. You had limitations on the ability of the FBI to engage in certain types of investigations. But let's just say that the limitations were not very comprehensive. They limited some aspects of the executive branch activities. Plus, if you try to be comprehensive, again, it's a question of a pendulum swinging back and forth. You have to be able to give the president an ability to protect the United States, to protect the American people. That's the most essential task of any president. So, to answer your question precisely, there were some limitations on the ability of the executive branch to engage in those activities. They were not completely successful, both because they were not attempted to be comprehensive in nature. And even if such an attempt was made, I would have very real doubt that they would have been constitutional. Again, there is no substitute for the political checks and balances, the bureaucratic checks and balances. What do I mean by that? If the executive branch, or Congress for that matter, is doing something that's fundamentally inconsistent with good government, enough people are going to be unhappy on the inside, are going to be unhappy about it. They're going to go and leak this to the media. It will be published. American people will be aware of it. And the miscreants involved will pay the political price. It is absolutely not true that for every aberrant behavior by the government, there is a legal remedy. And if you assume that there is a legal remedy, you would not only be acting in a way that's inconsistent with the Constitution, you would empower the judiciary to run everything. I mean, the question you would not be able to answer is the same question that always animated the framers. Who shall guard the guardians? Because if you repose all the power in the judiciary to deal with these violations, let's assume that they can effectively police the two political branches, but who will police them? So you have to accept some imperfections in the system. You have to accept the situations where there is a bad behavior, there's bad policy, but there's no obvious constitutional norm that's abridged by this, and there's no legal remedy. And you engage in the messy business of democracy, throwing the bums out. Never easy, but very satisfying in